Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy, Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I am back. This is a brand new Naofumi What If. What if Naofumi was a legendary android hero? And as always, if you enjoy, show some love. Leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below. I think this is going to be actually a two-parter. I was going to make it a movie, but I decided against it. This will probably be around 35 to 40 minutes, maybe even 45 minutes. I don't know. I haven't really decided yet. But we'll do this. We'll do another part, and then we'll be doing a movie. And that's just for my sake, because if I get 2 parts out, make a movie out of it, I get an extra upload for y'all. Because I know some of y'all really like watching the movies in its full. That's why I always do that. But it also gives me a day to like figure out what I'm going to do next. With that said, though, I'm not going to waste that much more of your time. Let's get right into part 1, or part 1 of 2, of What If Naofumi was a legendary android hero. Naofumi Iwatani is a normal boy, normal guy, just like all of us, or some of us. And he's just normal in general. Watches anime, reads manga with his parents, or basically lives with his parents, and so on. I mean, he goes to school / college, working here and there, but now he basically watches over his little sister for a bit of an allowance. But he wouldn't realize that one day his trip to the manga store would change his life forever. And at the end of the day, that's exactly what happens. He comes across a book that he normally would never read in a million years, but he would read it. He would begin reading this so-called book, and it would kind of talk about the rising of heroes, and it would talk about a sword, a spear, and also a bow. But here's the thing, he's confused. There's a weapon missing, and he reads further as actually words begin to appear, and when words begin to appear, it begins to say many things. Those words begin to say that this other hero, was a weapon in himself, far different than anyone could possibly imagine. A gem would be placed on the internal part of his chest, and it seems as if he was partially made up of metal, but it didn't seem that way. The metal was adapted to a humanoid skin, and, well, it made him some sort of an android, but maybe a robot. They're not sure. Maybe a cyborg. And more begins to get explained, but as things kept getting explained, well, things begin to glow around Naofumi, and then he appeared in a brand new world. He's faced with 3 other people, and those 3 other people had a sword, had a spear, and had a bow, just like the book said. And quickly, they wouldn't know who they were, but quickly they would see many royal people running through the kind of where they are. It seems like they're in a glorified cage of some sorts, and they look over toward those people, and they're completely confused, but quickly they're rushed up toward the king, and the king would begin speaking to all of them. The king would tell them all that they've been sent here to protect the kingdom of Melromark from something known as the waves. The waves are catastrophes that more or less surround this place, and more or less kind of hurt everyone within not only Melromark, but almost everywhere. But that's not something that the heroes would even know. They would only know that Melromark is affected by these waves. And it's the start of the manipulation of what this kingdom truly has, and truly has within. While Naofumi is standing here, though, he quickly realizes that this is very similar to a video game, because his eyesight, well, it's different than even the heroes. And he would even ask the heroes if they're seeing what he's seeing, but they would say no. That they gotta actually click the HUD menu and stuff like that to figure out what's going on. But Naofumi is different. Naofumi actually sees kind of calculations all throughout his eyes, sees observations, and even sees levels and strength and so on. Scanning the room, he can see that a lot of them are certain levels, and the levels vary massively. And he's actually just like intaking all of this data. It's as if his vision itself is giving him data on everybody, including the heroes. And soon they would realize and be told that they actually have to go out on their own. Well, of course they can build kind of a team some travelers and so on, but at the end of the day, they would be going out on their own. And, well, let's just say Naofumi hears this, and for some reason, deep down inside, he's not too terrified by this. And, well, good that he isn't, because when they start grouping up some of the best adventurers in Melremark, nobody wants to join Naofumi. They don't know who he is. They kind of say that he's, well, kind of an odd one out. The shield hero is supposed to be here, but then a remark is made saying that it's better that the shield hero is not anyways. But it seems like Naofumi is a faulty hero, maybe a hero that isn't supposed to necessarily be here, but at least he's better than the shield hero. And that remark is made a couple times throughout this time, but Naofumi doesn't take this to heart. Of course, he would decide that he's fine with going and finding adventurers on his own. Now, that might seem like an easy thing, but it's never an easy thing to find these adventurers on your own, especially in the place like Melremark. So when Naofumi decides to go out on his own, not only does he get this urge to wear a hat that he finds not too far outside of the Melremark castle, and it seems like this hat really wants him to say that he wants to grab this trucker hat. He's not 100% sure why, but maybe that's just some androidal instincts. I don't know if that's even a thing, but to Naofumi, it feels that way at least. With all that said, he travels outside of the kingdom and he begins to look for monsters to kill. He knows that he has this thing on his chest, but maybe he can try and kill some monsters. Maybe there's simple monsters to kill. And eventually he would come across some very, very small little balloon-like creatures. And when he would punch them, he would absolutely obliterate them. They would pop instantly, and Naofumi would absorb the kind of the little bits that are in this weird balloon-like monster. As he absorbs it, he feels that his strength would actually gain from this, and that's the only time his experience would actually go up. But his experience goes up quite a bit. He gets literally 0 experience when he punches things and kills things, but when he absorbs them, he gains experience. And it's actually quite a bit. But as he, throughout the day, continues to kill these little balloons, his experience would slowly but surely degrade just a little bit. Just a tiny bit. And it would go down kind of incrementally in terms of how many times he kills and absorbs these small balloon animals. So he thinks that this is probably some defaulty system that forces him to kill monsters that are different, that are unique, and that add variety. And this would be fine with him because he's gained quite a bit of levels, and this would be a good time for him to stop anyways. He has a little bit of money, especially because the king more or less gave him it, and no one else decided to join him, so he'll be just fine in finding a place to go, staying there for a little bit, and kind of figuring out his whole situation. So that's exactly what he wants to do. He kind of sits down in a room and kind of learns about his leveling system. He kind of scans his chest and his vision as he looks through his own body, and he looks honestly in a weird path of leveling system. He sees that there are various versions of stats that he can upgrade, but also versions of stats that upgrade on their own as well. So he has an absorption stat that allows him to absorb more of a creature. So we're talking right now he can absorb 100%, but he can level it up so it can absorb 110%, 120%. And in what that means is that it actually gives more experience per monster he absorbs, and actually cuts down the incremental decline of experience when he absorbs those creatures. He upgrades that a little bit, especially because he's gotten like 7-8 levels already because of his more or less statistical kind of gain of experience way faster than any other heroes. And he kind of looks at these other stat categories as well, and even some of these like moves and special weapons he's allowed to use. He looks at them, and it seems like there's a whole blurred out category, like a whole entirely different attribute category, and there's like 3 different versions, but it looks like they can be multiplied infinitely. There's one attribute section over here, one over here, one over there, one over here. They're everywhere. But there's no indicator of how to get them. And Naofumi wonders if maybe that has to do with party members. I mean, he has no party members, so that might be the only correlation he can really think of. Which is fine, he doesn't really think too much about it, so he continues to kind of upgrade his own pathways, in which he upgrades some of his strength, some of his ability to absorb, like I said before, but those are so very minuscule in kind of upgrades, because he already gets those upgrades per level, so they're not super big. Now, the main ones that he realizes he should be upgrading, which it's a little too late because he only has a couple more points, is some of these little special moves. And those special moves include flight, include energy manipulation, more or less shooting ki blasts and stuff like that. Energy in itself, he can actually get to the point that he has infinite energy, so that he actually never has to sleep in a way, right? He never has to sleep to a certain extent. And also in battle, it seems like his energy will never deplete, which is interesting to him, because he finds it that those are 2 very different things, that his need to sleep may be null and void, but maybe there's still a stamina drain in terms of in battle consequences, because when you're battling at a high level, that could be definitely some interaction that would be bad. With all that said though, Naofumi would kind of take a rest, go to sleep, and the next morning he would wake up. But when he would wake up, he would see that almost half, if not 75% of his money is gone. And he would be confused, like, how did that even happen? And Naofumi would kind of put the money away, and he would walk out the door, and no one was there. Seemed as if someone came in and stole his money. And Naofumi would try to report this to the king, but the king would act as if, more or less, like, there's no way that's the case. And mine would even come in and say that she saw Naofumi splurging on a ton of stuff that for him to eat and spend all of this money, and now he's just trying to get extra money out of her father. In which Naofumi hears this and is like weirded out by it, and he kind of waves them off, saying that it's not a big deal, that he'll just go make money himself, and 25% of what he has is a-okay with him. In which the king tries to say, well, just for being like disloyal, they're gonna take the rest of his money away. And Naofumi looks at him and shakes his head as he just leaves. He doesn't even try and say like, oh, I'm not gonna do that. He leaves with his money, and the king tries to have the guards stop him, but the guards go to hit him and try to stop him, and they can't even budge him. It seems like Naofumi's armor, or like his body, is pretty resistant, and that's something Naofumi didn't even know himself, so that's something good to think about. Naofumi would leave Melromark. His goal now, just leave and figure out whatever he needs to do ASAP. And he has a small ability to fly now, so he flies off. He decides that he's going to fly off, and he's going to look for a place that he can go, at least to a certain extent, and maybe he can find some good food, good people, and also maybe get some new people to add to his party. When he arrives at a brand new place, the village of Loot, he doesn't really find any of that, but he does donate a little bit of his money to the good people there, and they practically freak out because of how much money that really is and how much they can really get with that. And it's so good for them. And they say that he can stay as long as he wants. And he asks if they have any strong warriors, anybody that is capable in fighting. But they would say they really don't. And that's just unfortunate at this point. But they do bring up the fact that, well, there's this slave trader, and that they don't like the reason why there's not many good warriors anymore, and not many good people that are like fighters anymore, is because they're scared that the slave trader is going to take them and more or less take them away. And Naofumi hears this, and he grows interested, and he thinks to himself that, you know what, he's gonna go see what this is all about. He wants to see what this whole little slave trade thing is all about. And when he arrives and eventually would be guided in by a creepy man, the creepy man would explain how it works, what he has, and so on. And Naofumi would say that he wants these things released. Why does he have them? And of course, the creepy man, the slave trader, would say that this is all legal, that he's doing this and it's all legal under the Melromark rule, and this would make Naofumi kind of disgusted. Like, this is kind of disgusting, dude. And frankly, of course he would be. Naofumi, though, would say that he's going to pay for the freedom of a couple of these people, or a couple of these obviously slaves, and that's exactly what he does. He pays for a couple of very expensive creatures, and these creatures are like werewolf-like creatures, or like wolf-like creatures, and like these monsters kind of have a hard time obeying Naofumi initially when they're released out of the cage, but quickly, once Naofumi stops them from even hurting him, and once they bite on him and feel the crack of their own teeth, they immediately obey. And they don't even have a slave crest. And of course, the slave trader would say, oh yeah, you should do a slave crest, but Naofumi would shake his head. Naofumi would see on his own screen all of the analyzation of everything going on. He would see this little gem pop up on the chest of both of the animals he has in front of him. One, a black bear, and another, this wolf. He puts his hands on both of their chests, and they immediately are obedient. It seems like they're mindless creatures, and they're very calm though. And these gems kind of resemble this android-like gem on his own chest, and maybe this just turned them into kind of like cyborgs in a way. But he doesn't think too much about it. He's just following the role of what's in his brain and what was already there in his eyesight. The slave trader finds this to be insane, that it seems like they've gotten even stronger from that little thing he just did. And Naofumi looks at him and just rolls his eyes and says that he wants to take that little girl as well, the one that's sick and almost dying. And, well, of course, the slave trader says that's just fine, and Naofumi would buy her and do the same thing once again, and it seems like the little girl's sickness would just evaporate, would go away, and Naofumi would kind of tell her that everything's going to be okay. And of course the two animals would run over to her and be super nice. And Naofumi tells the slave trader to treat these animals better. He'll even flick him some extra money, and that he's going to tell him this one time. He may not be able to liberate all of them right now because legality, and that it's legal in Melromark, but he wants him to hear this very clearly. He's going to come back. He's going to buy all of them. He's going to release them, and he's going to bring them into a sanctuary very soon. And of course, the slave trader would say, oh yes, the heroic hero. Yes, we understand, heroic hero. And Naofumi kind of holds and grits his teeth because he kind of wants to just kill him. But Naofumi, well, he hasn't gone through anything traumatic enough to warrant him just murdering him straight up. And Naofumi hasn't truly realized how bad this world is. But with all that said, he takes Raphtalia and the two animals, and he brings them to actually Loot Village. And they are designated to protect Loot Village, at least for the time being. And he takes Raphtalia actually to train because she's extremely weak. It seems like the animals and Raphtalia have the same effects as Naofumi. It seems that they don't level up by just killing things, they actually have to absorb things as well. So he gets Raphtalia a nice sword and also just some simple clothing and armor, and they begin training. Raphtalia is kind of getting over her fears, and she would get over them relatively quickly because of the fact that she has this immense amount of power now. And throughout the time right before the wave, well, they would gain massive amounts of levels and would even go into a nearby mine to try to gain some money. But this nearby mine would lead to Raphtalia conquering her fears entirely, killing this giant dog double-headed dog monster, and Raphtalia would absorb it and would gain strength, so much so that she would grow into a young adult. Now, Fumi would be confused by this, but it would be explained to him that actually her kind, when they level up, they grow in age or grow into their prime, which is really good for battling, especially male versions of her species actually are perfectly set into battling like this, if they need to, of course, because if they're in a time of peace, then it literally doesn't even matter, and they could just progressively level up. With all that said, though, Naofumi goes back to Loot Village because he knows that they need to be prepared for this wave to come. He looks at the two animals that he has, being that the black bear and a wolf, and their levels seem to be pretty good. And he trains with them for the last day, but he could tell that they're very, very strong. And the fact is, if they weren't obedient to him, they might be able to hurt Naofumi quite a bit, at least to a certain extent. But since they were kind of wild and didn't understand what was going on, it's a little harder for them to actually hurt Naofumi. Because Naofumi's skin is so tough and so just durable that you have to defeat him in a different way. But Naofumi doesn't worry about that, at least not at this moment, and he gets ready for the wave. When he gets ready for the wave, he actually doesn't even go back to the Dragon Hourglass. He just knows that the wave is coming at a certain time, and he learns from Loot Village that it's going to happen within the next 6 hours. So he tells them that he's going to actually wait, take a bit of a rest because he hasn't rested that much, and if anything happens, wake him up instantly. He'll get up and he'll defeat this wave. They're grateful for this, and they say they're going to prepare supplies while he rests, and that's exactly what happens. They prepare supplies, the wave begins, and Naofumi is awoken. When Naofumi wakes up, though, oh my god. The zombies, the skeletons, the giant goblin-like creatures, the slaughter begins. Naofumi begins to absolutely pummel these creatures. Now, Raphtalia has her way with all of the skeletons and zombies, easily defeating them, and the black bear and also the wolf that Naofumi has begins to just devour, trample, and so on. And it's a absolute bloodfest. And Naofumi promises that they'll clean up Loot Village right after this, and it's pretty obvious who's going to win this fight. And Naofumi is curious at why it's taking so long for the wave to end. And he's eventually told that the main boss is kind of more or less what needs to be defeated for the whole wave to end. And Naofumi, hearing this, decides to fly over in the direction, and Raphtalia would soon follow, and she would be flying as well, being that she does have a stat leveling system very similar to Naofumi's, just nowhere near as strong and as potent, so her flying is a bit weaker. Think of it like when Gohan flies versus when Videl flies, right? It's nowhere near as good, but it's still enough to travel good distances pretty quickly. Naofumi would arrive to see that they're actually fighting a chimera, or a giant kind of manticore-like creature, and it seems like they're kind of toying with it, taking turns and so on, but eventually when he would get there, they would defeat the monster. The monster would be defeated, and the wave would subside, and that would be the first wave completed and over and done with. Now, Fumi, though, would kind of be wondering why they took so long. What was the point of kind of dragging it out? And they would say that they were just having their fun, like don't be so like grumpy and mad, and they would just leave the dead body of that chimera just laying there. Now Fumi would watch as they walk away, and he would ask how are they going to clean it up, and they say that that's not their problem. Ren, Itsuki, and also Motoyasu would say that that's the problem for some commoners, and this would kind of annoy him, but he knew what he was asking, and he knew the answer would have been exactly what they said. So he walks over with Raphtalia and even actually summons the black bear and the wolf, being that their connection with him is more of a master to slave relationship, but it's more like master android to minor android relationship. With Raphtalia, she's not mindless, so the summoning, you can't really summon her. It's just not how that works in this regard. But they would arrive next to him, and they all three would absorb this chimera. And as they absorb it, Naofumi's levels would spike extremely high, but the others would obviously cap out. Their levels would stop around 25, 28, but Naofumi's would exert toward the 40s. And the reason for this is because of Naofumi's ability to absorb more and not have that linear decline in terms of experience. But still, their experience would incline like crazy, and they would be sitting around 28 to 30 or level 30. And this would be extremely powerful, especially with their way of utilizing their own abilities. This would be extremely, extremely powerful, and more powerful than the other heroes. But how would they know? Especially because they act as if Naofumi isn't even a hero at all. With it all said and done, Naofumi Iwatani is ready to head off on whatever is to come after the first wave. Nothing bad happened during this wave by any means. It actually was pretty much smooth sailing. But of course, Naofumi's idea of preparation leans on the people that he has around him. So he does believe that maybe it's probably for the best to continue and to make sure to continue dealing in, well, the best faith they possibly can. So he decides that he's going to travel a bit, do a bit of moving, because he feels that there's a lot to be seen from here on out, and he would be eventually correct. Now, Fumi would get a mild invitation to the kingdom, but it's actually because someone within the kingdom made a mistake. They forgot that they didn't want to send out these invitations to people that were quote-unquote not heroes, but now Fumi would obviously just ignore it. He wouldn't worry too much about what's going on in the Melremark Kingdom. He would worry more about what's going on here, what he needs to do now, in which this would be very, very simple. Now, Fumi would leave with his party, Raphtalia, the black bear, and also a wolf. Two that he felt didn't need to be named and didn't need to be kind of tampered with in terms of their connection. They are loyal pets to him, and Raphtalia, on the other hand, is a living being, a true living being with a functional brain that can make its own decisions via free will. But now Fumi continued on his path, and eventually he would come across a group of bandits. These bandits would kind of threaten Naofumi, but Raphtalia would quickly cut through them like butter and immediately tie them up and leave them there stunned. They would be shocked. How is this even possible? How are they able to do this? But Naofumi says that they really shouldn't have done that, and they actually saved a traitor in doing so. And Naofumi tells the traitor that he owes him one, and the traitor says that he definitely does. Naofumi would steal a ton of stuff from these bandits, and it would be kind of like stealing from the other stealers or stealing from the other thieves. So in a way, is Naofumi a thief? Kind of, but that's kind of beyond the point. Naofumi takes all of their loot and heads off once again, and the trader, once arriving at his location, would tell Naofumi that he'll give him a trading pass, and on top of that, he'll give him the ability to do much more. Naofumi says that, well, it was simple enough for them to travel, so traveling to different places and doing missions for him should be easy enough as well. Naofumi takes the trading pass as basically a reward and says that if he has any quests for him to do or missions to go on, he'll take payment as a reward as well. Of course, the trader thinks this is a great idea. He doesn't want to go out and get killed by some of these bandits, so he'll let Naofumi kind of gain some of this money and rewards as he goes out and handles the business that could be bad. So the first one that he tells Naofumi that he needs to go on is help a village. It seems like this village is overrun. Yes, overrun with a ton of these kind of monstrous plants. Now, these monstrous plants are no joke. They seem to be completely constricting the village entirely and constricting the place entirely, forcing them to not be able to move in and out, and resources are growing slim. Naofumi sees this as an opportunity to go help out, so he does just that. He heads off to help out with that village, and as he arrives at the village, he sees all of these monsters. Him, Raphtalia, and his 2 other companions mow down all of the plants they see. But of course, it's never going to be that simple. He brings herbicide, but even this herbicide will no way be enough in terms of power. So he begins to think that maybe he needs to channel his energy manipulation into the herbicide itself. And maybe it'll overpower whatever's here and exterminate all the plants. But that's the issue. He'll exterminate all the plants, and then they will have no food to grow. And there's a chance that the soil won't be fertile. Naofumi thinks this far ahead and decides that it's worth the risk for him to destroy the plants, so they fly over and go to the mother of all trees, a giant tree that is obviously the root of all of the evil, no pun intended. But Naofumi plants the herbicide, injects it through the tree and its roots, and energizes it entirely. It just cripples all of the plants instantly, and all the plants would fall dead. But Naofumi would actually realize that's exactly what he thought would happen. They all might die, but all of the soil is now tainted. So he flies around gathering other places soil and just kind of good stuff for the healthy ground, or to make the ground more healthy. And on top of that, even getting some food that is owed from Loot Village. Loot Village happily supplies food, especially with how much money Naofumi provided initially, and these couple trips wouldn't take that long. He would arrive back to where he needs to get to, and he would deliver a crate full of food, and on top of that, he would also deliver much more. Like I said, the soil and stuff to fertilize the ground. And everyone is happy to see this. He apologizes for the desolate land, but they say that a lot of them have farming abilities, so they should be able to recover. It might take a little bit, but it should be a recovery period, and this food should get them through some time. Naofumi says that he'll come back and check on them every couple days to make sure that they're okay. They say that that's really not needed. Every couple days, there's not much that can happen within that time, but Naofumi insists. He says that he has quick travel, so it's not too big of a deal. Naofumi and his party would eventually leave, Raphtalia being happy of how much they helped that group of settlers and those group of villagers. That would lead them to the very next mission. Their very next mission would be one that actually surprised them immensely, and that would be, well, a sickness, a plague running over a village. This sickness, this plague, would definitely surprise Naofumi. He doesn't understand how this is even coming about and what's even going on, but I mean, it's something's going on, so he decides to kind of stay there and survey the area as he analyzes everything that's happening. And he realizes that this plague is all located at the top of that mountain, at the very, very top. He looks up and he can see that all of his sensors are flaring up there. And he tells Raphtalia and also his companions to come up with him. They fly or race up the mountain, and Naofumi would arrive to see a monstrous dragon. Now this dragon, yeah, it's a bit of an issue, because Naofumi sees that it's way too big just to evaporate. It might actually cause even worse of a plague, and it would take days, maybe even weeks to clear out entirely. So he can't just burn it all away instantly. It has to be kind of methodically and like more or less structurally taken apart. So he starts with the tail, cutting it off in half easily with kind of like this blade of ki. And as he does, it seems as if the dragon is a zombie dragon, and it begins to awaken. The dragon roars and begins to just scream toward Naofumi as if it's in pain. Naofumi quickly would burst into action, and so would Raphtalia with an energized sword as well, cutting toward the dragon. The two companions, the wolf and also the black bear, would dive toward the dragon, tackling it down. It seems like their strength is overwhelming the dragon entirely, and the few cuts and the few places that they cut the dragon, from legs to tail to now head, is now crucial enough to put the dragon down very quickly. And on top of that, they sense something within that dragon, and as Naofumi stabs into the dragon, pulling out this kind of gem, this crystal of some sort, he would take it and he would absorb it into his chest. As he does, it seems like he not only gets the ability to absorb the entirety of the dragon, being that he's now powerful enough to do so, but it seems like his his strength has evolved even further, and even further than he would even believe. His strength has now evolved into a new form. It seems like it's a more muscular form, but it seems that the ability actually requires him and his two companions, the black bear and also the wolf. Combining them both into himself, it allows him to actually surge the power of the dragon with the combination of the two of his companions into a power that is ungodly. Now, he doesn't bring this up to them, but he would eventually. He would decide to do that later on, but for now, they clean up the rest of the dragon, which involves mostly cutting up and Naofumi absorbing it, gaining immense strength. But like I said, that strength does peter off to a certain extent, so some of the party members, Raphtalia and the two other companions, would gain that strength as well. After it is all said and done, and the people down below are good and cleared and healthy, Naofumi sees this as a good time to take a bit of a rest, take a bit of a vacation, not necessarily for long, but they all head to this hot spring out on a delivery mission, and they kind of relax, take a load off, and that's when he brings up this power that he's gained. And of course, the loyalty is undeniable for all three of them. Even Raphtalia says that she would do it if it means Naofumi would save this world. And Naofumi says that it only works with the two of his companions because they are animals, it seems, or at least beings that are undeniably, uncontrollably loyal. That they are so loyal to the point that if Naofumi told them to go basically jump off a cliff, they would do that. And of course, they are so loyal that they agree to this as well, and you can tell through their body language. But Naofumi says that there's no point in now because he doesn't know if it's reversible. Because if it's not reversible, then they would be down 2 party members and it would become a bit of an issue. Naofumi sees this kind of as a relatable thing, at least at the moment. And with that said, he continues to upgrade not only himself through his stat system, but also the people that are in front of him. His stat system works so much differently than anyone else's. Of course, this is unbeknownst to him, but he increases the size of the black bear and the wolf, making them giant. Not giant to the point of they're like 20 feet tall, but big enough to actually ride. So if they don't want to travel via flight, they don't have to. And this would be good for interaction with different villages and so on. And he has the ability to shrink them a little smaller back to their normal forms if need be. During this travel though, back to Melremark Kingdom just to get some more supplies and also move them back to Loot Village, because he wants to make sure that not only Loot Village but many other villages that he's worked with stay sustained. He starts heading off, and he would run into a girl that seems to be playing with the Filolials. The black bear and also the wolf would go play with her for a little bit, and Naofumi would learn that she's trying to get back to the Melremark Kingdom as well, with no grievances really of anything. He's not like he's been that betrayed. I mean, he has to a certain extent, but not to the level that he would have in canon. He takes her, decides to take her there, and drops her off at the Melremark Kingdom. Of course, a dispute would awaken pretty quickly while he's there with Raphtalia, and Motoyasu would say that this is unholy to have a slave on his team, but he would say that she is no slave. She has free will, and on top of that, she wears no slave crest. He actually freed her from the slaves, or slave trader. But with that said, he actually has a job to do in terms of freeing more of them. Of course, Motoyasu would disagree and would attack Naofumi, but the person to block would be Raphtalia. Far stronger, it seems, than Motoyasu, at least in just potent strength. Her energy blade, turning her sword into this blue beam of energy, would stop his own spear instantly, and she would be offhanding it. She wouldn't be in a strong holding stance, as if she knows that her strength is overwhelming compared to his. He's shocked. He is taken back, and frankly, his manhood is completely obliterated by this, and Raphtalia would kick him aside as she puts her blade away and says that Master Naofumi doesn't want to fight, and that she follows the wishes of him. She would float and begin flying away with him, as the other two would follow suit as well, running off, not being able to really use flight the way Naofumi and Raphtalia do, but still pretty fast in their own right. But as they fly away, the little girl would arrive once again, and she is, well, the heir apparent to the throne. She is actually the little sister of that one girl that betrayed Naofumi to a certain extent, the little sister of mine. And frankly, this is definitely off-putting. Mel is someone that is kind of in the favor of Naofumi, but Naofumi wouldn't listen too much to what she was saying because he even told her that he has things to do. He has nothing against her, but he has things to do before the next wave, and only days separate from that time. He would leave, but Mel would make it clear that Naofumi is to not be messed with, and on top of that, he's to be treated like a hero, and that is the facts of it. And of course, many people would disagree with this, but she would say that these are orders straight from the queen. But they could always decide to dispute them and disagree. I mean, they just have to deal with the consequences later. With all that said, Naofumi would set off toward the slave market once again, and when he would arrive, he would begin buying more and more to kind of free them and bring them to Loot Village. The idea is to have them be not only superpowered and androided and changed entirely to be loyal and also help out around the kingdom. It would be good to actually put them a couple at Loot Village, couple at different other villages he's passed on by, and so on and so forth. Even during this time, he continues throughout these days helping more and more villages, even ones that had a famine. And he realizes that all three of these villages that he's helped actually have one thing in common. They were all messed up by the heroes. It was either Ren, Itsuki, or Motoyasu. They all messed up in some capacity. But that's not something he needs to deal with now. With days before the wave, there's very little time, but a lot to be done. But with that said, that's for the final part, or the next part, of What If Naofumi Was the Legendary Android Hero. If you enjoyed part 1 of 2, then make sure to leave a like, leave a sub, and leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.